Imagine starting in a tiny, cramped apartment with just $3,000 in your pocket and turning that into a global empire that scares the most powerful governments on the planet. Sounds like a movie script, right? But for Huawei, this isn't fiction. It's the ultimate tech glow-up of the century. It is a story of ambition, survival, and massive power. How did a small company from Shenzhen go from being a complete nobody to the titan we know today? To understand the scale of this madness, we have to look at the man behind the curtain. Meet Ren Zhengfei. He isn't your typical hoodie-wearing Silicon Valley CEO. We're talking serious military man turned CEO vibes all the way. His historical background in the People's Liberation Army is exactly what makes international regulators so incredibly nervous. Is he just a visionary businessman, or is there a strategic mastermind at play here? The mystery surrounding him is thick, and it's been the fuel for 1,000 geopolitical conspiracy theories. Forget the polished garages of California. Huawei started as a side hustle that went wild back in the late 80s. They weren't building world-changing 5G networks or sleek flagship smartphones. No, they were busy reselling simple phone switches imported from Hong Kong. It was basic, it was gritty, and it was the definition of humble beginnings. But Ren Zhengfei didn't want to just be a middleman forever. He wanted to build something original. This ambition birthed what insiders call the wolf culture. The tea on this internal culture is absolutely wild. Have you ever heard of the betting culture? In the early days, employees didn't just work long hours, they kept foldable mattresses under their desks. If you weren't sleeping at the office to get a project finished, you weren't even trying. This intense drive created a workforce that was ready to hunt in packs, just like wolves. They were aggressive, fast, and completely relentless in their pursuit of market share. But with that incredible speed came some serious international drama. Was it pure genius or just a case of borrowing inspiration from the West? The early years were plagued by rumors that Huawei was simply copy-pasting existing Western technology. The most famous explosion happened when Cisco sued them, claiming Huawei had even copied the software manuals word for word, including the typos. Talk about an awkward moment. While the tech world was busy debating their ethics, Huawei was playing a massive game of 3D chess. It was a brilliant, if controversial, strategy. While the big American and European players were fighting over the glitzy markets in New York, London, and Paris, Huawei was low-key winning over the forgotten parts of the world. They went into the deep rural areas of China where the big guys didn't want to bother. They expanded into Africa and Southeast Asia when everyone else thought those markets weren't worth the effort. It was classic stealth mode. By the time the world finally looked up, Huawei had built a global foundation that was virtually unshakable. They didn't just stay in the cheap alternative lane though. Huawei became totally obsessed with research and development. Why do they spend more money on R&D than almost anyone else? Because Ren Zhengfei knew that to lead, you have to own the very air we breathe, electronically speaking. They poured billions into 5G infrastructure years before most of us even knew what the term meant. Suddenly, they weren't just a budget brand anymore. They were the literal kings of connectivity, leaving competitors in the dust. The moment the Western world realized they weren't playing around was the moment the tension reached a boiling point. Is their success just down to working harder than everyone else? Or is there a secret sauce of government support keeping them afloat? This debate has tech Twitter in a total frenzy. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The stakes have never been higher than they are right now. Everything was going great until the spotlight got a little too bright. Suddenly the vibe shifted. Huawei went from being the hardworking underdog to being labeled the final boss of tech by the United States government. Why the sudden change of heart? Well, it all boils down to the ultimate high-stakes spy game. The US started shouting from the rooftops about back doors, those secret digital entrances that would supposedly allow Beijing to peek into everything from our private techs to top secret military data. But here's the kicker. Where are the receipts? Is there actually any hard evidence that your phone is a spy, or is this just a massive case of geopolitical jealousy? After all, when you're winning the 5G race by such a massive margin, the competition is bound to get a little salty, right? Then things got incredibly personal. If you thought corporate lawsuits were usually boring, think again, because the arrest of Meng Wanzhou was straight out of a Hollywood thriller. As the CFO and the daughter of Ren Zhengfei, she's basically tech royalty. When she was detained in Canada back in 2018, it sent shockwaves through the entire industry and the diplomatic world. This wasn't just about spreadsheets and business deals anymore. It was a full-blown family and diplomatic crisis that kept the entire world on the edge of its seat for years. While that legal battle was dragging on, Washington dropped the ultimate hammer, the Entity List. Imagine being the #1 smartphone brand in the world, sitting right at the top of the mountain after years of grinding, and then waking up to find you've been canceled by the entire US supply chain. No more Google, no more Android updates, and most importantly, no more high-end chips from the likes of Qualcomm or Intel. It was the ultimate cancel culture moment for a global corporation. Losing Google was like a digital breakup that everyone saw coming, but nobody was truly ready for. Suddenly, new Huawei phones didn't have YouTube, Gmail, or the Play Store. For a global audience totally addicted to the Google ecosystem, it felt like the end of the road. Did Huawei sit in a corner and cry about their bad luck? Absolutely not. They got busy. This crisis birthed the Harmony OS era. They decided that if they couldn't play in the Western sandbox anymore, they'd just build their own, and they'd make it bigger and more integrated than anything we'd seen. It was a massive gamble. A do or die moment that forced them to reinvent their entire software DNA from scratch. But the hardware side was even crazier. How do you keep launching high-end tech when the world's most advanced chip makers are forbidden from even talking to you? This is where the chip war secrets come in. Rumors have been flying for years about who might be helping them behind the scenes, or how they're building secret domestic supply chains to keep the lights on. It's some real cloak and dagger stuff happening in the shadows of the tech world. Instead of looking at Huawei like a suspicious outsider, the public started treating them like a national hero. The fan loyalty is next level. We're talking about Apple of the East vibes here. The stan wars on social media between Apple sheep and Huawei loyalists are legendary and intense. To their fans, Huawei isn't just a brand, it's a symbol of Chinese resilience. The company that refused to back down even when the most powerful country on earth tried to pull the plug. And because they couldn't rely solely on phones anymore, Huawei started diversifying in ways you'd never expect. They began pouring their massive R&D budget into hidden assets that seemed totally wild. We're talking about everything from self-driving car technology to smart pig farming. Yes, you heard that right, smart pigs. When your smartphone business gets messy, you adapt or you die. They are putting their digital brains into every industry imaginable, proving that they are much more than just a phone company. The transformation was only beginning. Just when the global tech community was ready to write Huawei's final obituary, something truly insane happened that turned the entire industry upside down. In the late summer of 2023, right as a high-ranking US official was visiting China to discuss trade, Huawei pulled a total mic drop move. They quietly released the Mate 60 Pro without any flashy pre-order event or even a press release. It was the ultimate surprise drop that sent shockwaves all the way to Washington. Why was the world melting down over a smartphone? It all came down to what was inside, the ghost chips. Inside was a 7nm Kirin chip that technically shouldn't exist due to the massive sanctions blocking Huawei from advanced technology. The internet exploded with theories. Did they build a secret factory under a mountain? Did they find a loophole in the laws of physics? Experts tore these devices apart in record time. Huawei had done the impossible. This comeback wasn't just about hardware though, it was a massive signal that the company had survived its near-death experience and was stronger than ever. But this success has created one of the biggest splits in public opinion we've ever seen. Depending on who you ask, Huawei is either a massive security threat or the ultimate symbol of global resistance. In the West, many people are still super skeptical, but worrying that the company's military roots mean our data is never truly safe. They see backdoors everywhere, but on the other side of the globe, they are being hailed as absolute heroes. To them, it's a David versus Goliath story of pure grit. Which side are you on? Is it a high-tech security nightmare or the world's greatest underdog success story? The debate is heating up everywhere. Meanwhile, Harmony OS is no longer just a backup plan for when Google walked away. It has evolved into a massive interconnected brain that is trying to take over your entire life. In a cool way, of course. They are putting this software into everything from smart TVs to high-end electric SUVs. Imagine your car synced with your phone and home office without a single drop of Western software. They're even working on crazy smart technology for traditional industries like mining and even high-tech pig farming. Talk about a glow-up. They've basically turned a crisis into an opportunity to build a completely independent digital world that doesn't rely on Silicon Valley. This massive resurgence is making certain rivals very nervous, especially Apple. For a few years, the iPhone was the undisputed king in China while Huawei was benched. But the tea is boiling now because rumors from the supply chain suggest that Apple is losing losing serious ground in its most important growth market. Huawei fans are coming back in droves, treating their new phone purchases like a badge of pride. On social media sites like Weibo, the stan wars between Apple loyalists and Huawei fans are legendary and sometimes pretty hilarious. It's about which side of the tech war you want to support. Even on Reddit, tech geeks are obsessed with how these banned phones are still pushing the boundaries of satellite connectivity and zoom lenses. All of this points toward a future that gives off major dystopian movie vibes. Are we heading toward a digital Cold War? It's looking more likely every day. We could end up with two completely separate internets, one for the West, powered by the usual suspects like Google and Meta, and another splinter net powered entirely by Huawei's infrastructure and Harmony OS. It would be a total fracture of the global village we were once promised in the early days of the web. For the founder, Ren Zhengfei, and his daughter, Meng Wanzhou, this fight has become deeply personal. At 79, the mastermind is focused on his final legacy. Is he the ultimate survivor who outlasted the most powerful government on Earth? Or is he leading us toward a more divided world? The consensus is still split, but one thing is for sure, Huawei proved they don't need a permission slip from anyone to innovate. Can they ever truly reclaim that global #1 spot? They've already won by proving they can't